All right, well, we're so happy to have Alexa Alami and Catherine Beekler here today. You're both seniors at Palo, and you are leading the new Student Rise group working to educate and raise awareness around sexual harassment and violence at Palo. So yes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Could you tell me a little bit about your group and what your goal is?
Yeah, so our group has many focuses. This past semester, we've been focusing on providing feedback to Anea, who's going to be implementing 4 40-minute sessions this semester. So we've been providing feedback to her on how to improve her current education.
And this is Anea Bogue. She's an expert on gender and violence prevention.
Yes, and our district has actually brought her in. She did assemblies last year, but this year she's going to be doing, she's been creating sessions that the teachers will teach that are going to be smaller groups. And so one of the purposes of this is to, from our perspective, I think, eliminate joking. That's a big issue on our campus, of joking about these issues. And I think in larger group settings, there's more room to have this joking. I don't know if you agree, Alexa. Yeah. So that's one of our main purposes. I think another thing is to have continuous education throughout the year on this. So we're doing more of projects, which kind of give, this continuous education rather than having just like one assembly and then nothing, which is really what makes the 4 40-minute sessions really nice, is because they're in blocks, so you're having a more continuous educational experience.
When we first met, you talked about how there was an assembly with another expert, Jackson Katz.
Yes.
And for you, while that was helpful, what was much more impactful was sort of the smaller classroom discussion afterwards.
Exactly. So we're both in the social justice pathway. And I actually spoke about an experience at one of the Palo Alto, the PAUSD district board meetings about, you were in the discussion too, when we had the discussion with Miss Angel about, and we were just talking about our campus culture, and it was a long time ago, it was like sophomore year, but everyone started opening up and being really honest with each other. So I'm really excited to see how these smaller group settings work this semester.
And Alexa, part of what brought you to this effort was a survey that you conducted for your social justice pathway class that showed that joking about sexual violence and consent is pretty commonplace, but also a real desire for this more in-depth, serious education among students. So why did you conduct that survey, and how did it work?
So I conducted this survey because the only annual sexual harassment, sexual assault education we had was during this 40-minute lesson, which was both bullying and harassment. And I found that few people were paying attention, and just through my experiences and the experiences of my friends, I knew this had to be addressed in a more, I think, more appropriate way. And so that led me to working with a local design thinking company and designing this survey, which garnered, I think, 243 responses, which I was not expecting, because this is a voluntary survey, and these very in-depth responses, and I would say very passionate responses too, on this issue. And I would also say there was a consensus that, like you said, people were frustrated with the joking. They wanted more information on intimate partner violence and the available resources and how to report to. So,
Where do you think that the joking attitude comes from among students?
I think it stems from a fear of, I guess, being ostracized. I think these behaviors are very common, and I think now that there's more of a recognition that these behaviors are not okay, I think people are fearful that, I'm going to, get some backlash. And I think it's kind of reflected in the Me Too movement. So Yeah, I think fear mostly, and possibly discomfort with these topics because they're so taboo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And before both of you sort of got involved in this work, what was your own understanding of consent and healthy relationships? And, if you were sexually assaulted or harassed, or a friend was, what you were supposed to do about it? Like, did you feel like you had a good grounding in those issues and what to do?
Yeah, I think a main issue with our education is, at least for me, I felt like everything I had learned was very textbook, and I didn't know, like, it was what was, even in like middle school, when I had a lot of issues in middle school, like, I didn't know that it was not okay. Those behaviors were not okay because no one ever told me about them. No one ever talked about it. Like, no teachers, no adults, not even my parents. And now I see that as a huge issue, and I see that I just wish I knew more so I could really go to someone and tell them, like, what happened and what I was going through, because I didn't realize that, those actions are not okay on any level. Yeah. And so I think that it's so important that Pally is now going beyond living skills and teaching, okay, what is consent? Like, we're going beyond and taking it a step further and saying, okay, yeah, consent is super important, but let's take it a step further and talk about healthy relationships, because that's an essential part of this education, especially for high schoolers. Yeah. I see so many people around me with relationships they're in, and I don't see them as healthy, but they do because they're in it, And so I think helping Pally students identify what is a healthy relationship to them, like what did they want in a relationship, and then before they go into it, so they're not kind of blindsided. That's my experience. I think it's just really sad that I didn't know in middle school, like, that it was, like, okay, like, I should tell someone when these things happen. Yeah. So that's why I'm really happy at least Anea's going to be presenting to 8th graders too now. And we're definitely going to try to work further. Our group is going to try to work further to have us as students, as high schoolers, to talk to the middle schoolers, because I think they can really look up to us. Yeah. Even us, like, I look up to college students, So.
Yeah. It's obviously different hearing from either someone your age or close to your age than an adult who you don't know.
Exactly. And I think students talking about these issues, and I think for Anea's sessions, we're also trying to have students pair up with a teacher, because I think when you see a student come in and present this information, I think you kind of realize, oh, wait, what? Students are involved with this? Like, and having the feedback that we gave. Like, one thing we're doing is she has kind of note cards with, like, different things in relationships, and so we've recommended kind of scenarios in different relationships that are in the gray areas of, is this a healthy relationship or not? And so I think by doing that, students are going to see these scenarios and be like, what? How did the adults know about these scenarios that happen every day in high school? Like, how do they know about this? How do they know about what happens on Snapchat? How do they know what happens on Instagram? Like, so that's, I think, will be really good too.
Yeah. I think one thing I was really struck by, both when I met with you and your group initially and also looking at your survey results, was this sort of the more subtle but really pervasive harassment or just inappropriate behavior, whether it's older, like, upperclassmen boys pursuing younger girls, or sending inappropriate photos unsolicited, or catcalling, or ranking girls. What's been your experience with sort of that more subtle culture at Pally?
Yeah, I would say I've experienced those things.
Yeah. I think it's sad that it's a part of our Pally culture. I think a lot of people have experiences with these kind of behaviors.
And especially I, as a freshman, received, like, an unsolicited picture from an upperclassman, and this was, like, the first time I'd ever seen that part of the body. And so I think having had an education in middle school would have been very beneficial for me. And not only for me, but for everyone.
Because it feels uncomfortable talking to adults about these things, of course, but if I was educated by adults and they talked about it first and they initiated it, I would feel like, oh, I can talk to them about it because they have told me about it, you know? So I think it's kind of connecting the adults with, especially middle schoolers on this education is so important because we come into high school and we don't know anything, you know? even us, we were like, I didn't know anything, to be honest.
Yeah, which is normal.
Exactly. It's so normal. And then you having these behaviors where upperclassmen are like going for underclassmen. Like even I think Alexa talked a little bit about how there's something called the golden sombrero, and it's like I think it's not as popular anymore. But I remember coming in as a freshman and hearing so much about this thing where a senior guy, or I don't know if it even has to be a senior guy, but they're hooking up with someone in each grade, you know? And so being a freshman and being like, what? Like, and feeling like, oh, like, who are they going to target in the freshman girls? Like, you know? And so it's super sad. It's like super scary, you know?
Yeah.
Especially not knowing like what you're getting into or what it means, or not being able to talk about it with any adults. And no one said anything either.
Yeah. How have other students reacted to your work? Because I imagine there's some people who are very on board and they get it, and then there are other students who maybe have a different perception of what you're trying to do.
I think for the most part, everyone's been really supportive so far. Even our close friend group of guys are very supportive of what we're doing, which has been really, really nice. So for the most part, there's been a very positive reaction. I don't know. I think not everyone knows about us, so I'm sure there are opinions out there that are negative about our group. But because I think because it's our first year, there's not as much awareness of who we are and what we do. But I mean, hopefully, we're hoping to kind of reach out to more people in our Palo student body next year. So getting more underclassmen, because we're primarily juniors and seniors right now. I don't know, what's your experience with, have you gotten any like?
No, I'm just remembering, we did this activity, poster making activity in April.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
And basically what we did was we wrote kind of messages of
support to survivors. Empowerment in general. So it was like on our quad, and I think we had like 75 people come out. People would just, we had pens and posters, you would just write something, whatever you want, we put them all over our school.
And I would say this group of students was representative of, all grades, all genders. And actually, I had one student after message me and say, that was cool. Like, and this was a male student. And so I was like, wow, I'm really glad he was able to get something positive from this experience too.
Yeah, I was super glad to see that you guys have guys in your group participating, because obviously you need both genders to participate to really make it impactful.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I'm curious because obviously the Me Too movement has dominated headlines just nationally and locally over the last few years. How do students talk about and perceive the Me Too movement at Palo in your experience?
In my experience, when I've tried to have conversations about it, I've been told it's a witch hunt. And this is often with the opposite sex. But I feel like from the female perspective, it's been more empowering than it has been derailing. And I think I've spoken to family members, family friends about this. People have shared their stories after 50 years. And so I think for the most part, in my experience, it's been more empowering than it has been derailing. So
I agree.
Yeah.
So what projects and initiatives are you guys currently working on with your group?
Okay, I'll talk about the senior event. Okay. So we actually talked about this in our board presentation. So this April, we're hoping to have an event, a panelist event, where we have invited some students from Stanford and Foothill and just people from the workforce in general to kind of answer questions that Palo students have. So basically the format of it would be that students will have, prior to the event, they'll send in their questions. We'll kind of sort through them, pick out the most frequently asked or most important ones. And so then we'll send those to the panelists so they're kind of prepared to know what we're going to be speaking about, because we don't know really what exactly students are going to want to know from these students.
And is it going to be open-ended, or is this supposed to be related, like life after high school, or
it's going to be focused on navigating consent issues, relationship. And so, so that's going to be the main focus. But I mean, students will have the opportunity after the panel event to have a more intimate setting where they can go up to specific panelists and ask questions. So, I mean, they can ask whatever they want after, but we're hoping that the main event will be more focused on these issues. Anything else? I think, we're hoping to have it in April and during, in one of our, I think either the PAC or the Haymarket Theater. But we just met with Adam Paulson and Dr. Keating, which are our principal and our assistant principal. And so they really liked the idea. Our district had a very positive response to the idea. And so they just said that we'll either have it during school hours or after school hours. Just we have to sort through a few things of like thinking about the logistics of it. But for now, we're just still kind of figuring everything out. So,
And you're also working on a new survey for your class.
Yes.
I am, So as part of the social justice pathway, we take this class called Advanced Authentic Research, in which you kind of pursue a research project of your choice during the course of the year. And so the subject of my research is Title IX and reporting, and how our district might improve our reporting process. And so basically, my methodologies involve me attaching a survey to our Title IX Resolution Agreement survey, which was instituted back in 2017, and which we're obligated to do annually, to kind of understand why fewer people are reporting and understand what the perceived barriers are to reporting, because in previous years, again, this survey has been administered and the data have shown that, there's a greater awareness of what constitutes harassment and assault, and more people can identify it, and so the self-reported rate has increased while the rate to reporting to school officials has decreased. So why is this?
Do you have a sense of why that might be?
I feel, the resources might not be accessible enough. And I also know, having had, Chanel Miller here, and just kind of all the negative publicity, and I know her experience having read her book was just very negative. And so why report if, ultimately it could be more damaging than...
Yeah. And I also think students really don't know what the process is going to be like going into it. That's another project we're working on this year. A group of juniors are actually working on it. And so looking at the Palo website, there's not really any direct way to find out, what happens when you report? So students are going in with these expectations, and if they're not met, they have this really bad experience. So we need to, that's one of our main projects this year as well, is we're probably going to print out sheets of graphics that are explaining the reporting process, put them on the back of bathroom stalls, put them all around our school. So because even like me, I don't even know what even happens, I mean, I have a very, very brief understanding.
And it's a complex process.
Exactly, it's so complex. And so, and we're also hoping to, on the back of, we have ID cards for Palo, and we're hoping to put, which Mr. Paulson and Dr. Keating, a few days ago, they're very in support of putting hotlines on the back of our ID cards and having a place in our Palo website where it has a whole page about reporting.
That's great.
So that's a really cool project as well that juniors are working on this year.
Yeah. So at one of your survey questions, you asked students if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change about the way students at Palo approach the topic of sexual harassment? How would each of you answer that question?
Go ahead, Catherine.
I don't know. Wait, I need some time to think. You could wave a magic wand. I don't know. Do you want to go first? I don't know what to say yet.
Sure. I think right now, I think we really have a good understanding of consent, students in our school. But I think what we've been talking about is kind of going beyond that and actually, having healthy relationships and what constitutes a healthy relationship. And just having, respect for one another and no longer this, fear of repercussions. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I also just wish, Palo students were, and I know there are so many students at our school that are really interested in how they can get to this healthy relationship, but I don't want to teach it and for students to just brush it under the rug. And so I think that's one of our main goals this year is to create this learning experience where students are actually being challenged. Because so many, even looking through the curriculum, it's just we don't want students to go into the classroom and think of this as another assignment to just get done.
Yeah.
Because even with one of the assignments, it's just, or the part of the curriculum, it's filling out a piece of questions about a certain scenario, and it's we don't want students to just be okay, let's just say this, whatever, we want students to actually engage in that conversation. I think that's something I talked about in our social justice classroom that makes this topic so intriguing to talk about, talking about healthy relationships and what should be the expectations. And so I guess if I could have anything, I would want students to really take this seriously and to take what they learn in the classroom and really apply it to their lives, you know?
Yeah, well, I think that illustrates why your role is so important to have that student voice, because no matter how expert someone is on a topic, I think without sort of the understanding of what it's really like for teenagers today in 2020, in Palo Alto, it's not going to really work.
Totally.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys wanted to mention about your group?
I'll mention one more project that we have going on, which is really exciting. It's not really connected to Palo, but 2 students that are sophomores are doing a poetry slam event in March. So hopefully we'll have a good turnout for that. And anyone can come and read poetry it doesn't have to be their own, but it's going to be a really fun event. I think they're working with the Teen Arts Council. So we're really excited about that. They're these 2 students, sophomores, so passionate about everything. Everyone in our group is so passionate, which is so cool to see. But that's just another project to talk about. Anything else, Alexa?
No, I just kind of want to add on to what you said before, to see this kind of more as an opportunity than a burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To really just maximize the experiences as students. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your work. We were just talking about before this started about how I had nothing like this kind of education or even a conversation in high school, so I appreciate what you guys are doing. That wraps up this edition of Behind the Headlines. Thank you for watching. If you think you know someone who'd be interested in watching this episode, please click share below. For all Palo Alto news, you can always go to paloaltoonline.com or visit any of our social media channels.